So before I get started, I just wanted to show you the finished product here. You can see I have 6 holes. Actually, I have 7. I have 1 in the center. You can see that these little places for the bullets are radially symmetrical, and they are kind of in between where these indentations are. So if I look at the wireframe on shaded, you can see that this is all quads. The geometry is relatively light. Actually, I probably don't need a lot of these edge loops going across here because they're not really defining any particular shape. But once I get up to the top, you can see it's all quadrangular. And if I hit the 1 key on this, you can see that it's kind of a 12-sided cylinder, and each of these holes then occupies 1/6 of that 12-sided cylinder. The process here is simple and straightforward. It's a modular approach. What I want to build is just 1/6 of this entirety, and you can see that this 1/6 contains one of these indentations, and then 50% of each one of these holes. When I've done this, then I can just hit my duplicate special, and before I do this, I want to make sure that my pivot point is at the center of the grid. If it's not there, I'll move it there. My duplicate special options, I have my rotation value set to 60 degrees, and I have the number of copies set to 5. I ultimately want 6. I already have 1, so I only need 5 additional ones. So I'll duplicate special, and then I have the entirety. This is still 6 individual pieces, so I'd want to combine these meshes and then merge the vertices, and that's what gives me my hole. If I hit the 3 key, you can see that I have a nice perfect round piece. I'm going to start this off with a NURBS curve, and I'm going to revolve this curve into a NURBS cylinder, and then I'm going to convert it to polygons. This is just one of those cases where I think that defining the shape with a NURBS curve is a little bit easier, even though my ultimate goal is to make this out of polygons. So I'm going to select my my CV curve, and I'm going to start to the left of my center line here, and I'll just start with a with laying down 1 CV here. If I hold down the Shift key, my next CV will either be directly above or directly in line with it horizontally, depending on where I click. I'm going to go ahead and click above, and then I'm going to go ahead and make this turnaround. So I'll just go above it a little bit, and then to the left a little bit, and come over here and create this shape here. So I'll come down. I'm holding the Shift key down the whole time here, and so I'll just click here and then make the turnaround along here. Now when I'm drawing these, I'm not so I'm just going to finish that. So when I draw these, I wasn't 100% certain that I had these vertices lined up above and below. And when I'm holding down the Shift key, there's not really any way of snapping them. So I'm going to go ahead and snap them after the fact. So I'll just I'll select these vertices here, and I'll hit the W key, and I'll click on the red arrow to make sure that I'm only moving along the x-axis. I'm going to come down here, hold down the V key, and click with my middle mouse button, and that's going to snap these vertices to the position along the x-axis of these vertices. Let me just exaggerate that a little bit. I'll pull this all the way over here and come close to these vertices, hold the V key down, and middle mouse click and drag just a little bit, and that's going to snap those right into line. So if I want to make some adjustments here, I might feel as though this line is a little bit too round. I'm going to fix this all in the polygon model anyway, but just for the sake of checking out NURBS here, I can move these And the closer I have these vertices, just like with polygons and edge loops, the closer I have them, you know, the tighter my corner is going to be. So let's go down here and do the same thing. I'll just, you know, move this one a little bit and this one a little bit, and then I'll take these two. And I'm going to snap these to the x-axis. I'm sorry, on the y-axis I'm going to snap them to the grid so that they're lined up with each other, and then I'll pull them down manually to create that. So this may be a complete waste of time. Once I you know, once I revolve this in and turn it into polygons, I'm going to want to, you know, make some adjustments there. So let's just move on. I'm going to select the curve in object mode. Notice that the pivot point is at the center here. And I'm going to go into my surfaces menu, and I'm going to revolve this. The revolve is going to go along the y-axis, which is the default. It's going to go 360 degrees, which is also the default. And I want to make this into 12 segments, which we discussed before. I could make it directly into polygons, but I'd rather convert it. It's a little bit easier for me. So I'll just go ahead and apply that revolve. Okay, so we can see now that I have that cylinder. This is really nice. This is exactly what I'm looking for. The next step then is to convert this to polygons. So I'll select this, and I'm going to go to Modify, Convert NURBS to Polygons. When I do this, I want to make sure that my type is set to quads, because that's the way I like to work. My tessellation method is going to be general. Now, tessellation just means turning these NURBS patches into triangles or quadrangles. It's a conversion. It's a word that just means the conversion here. And I have, in my initial tessellation controls, let me just set this back to the defaults here. So I want to go to quads and general. And then my initial tessellation controls, I have three options here. The first one is per surface number of isoparms in 3D. The second one is per surface number of isoparms. And the third one is per span number of isoparms. That's the one that I want to use, per span, on both of these. And I want to set these both to 1. So what that means is that in the U direction, which is this vertical direction, each one of these curved segments between isoparms is considered a span. Same thing in the V. Every one of these curved segments is considered a span. So by setting this to 1 and 1 per span, that means I'm going to get one polygon edge for each of these spans, and I'll get one polygon face for each one of these NURBS patches. So I'll just go ahead and make sure that none of these other options are selected, and I'll just go ahead and click on Apply. So I can see that I've got that already. I can move it off to the side briefly, and you can see that that gives me my polygonal object. So that's, you know, pretty much exactly what I'm looking for. One thing is that there's a historical connection here. So if I select this NURBS object, you can see that the polygon object highlights in purple. So if I move any of the vertices of the NURBS object, you know, I'm going to get you know, a connected response in the polygon. So I really don't want that historical connection. So I can break that by selecting this and saying Edit, you know, delete by type history, and now that selection, that connection is no longer there. And then I can go ahead and delete this NURBS object. I can delete the curve as well. I'm going to take the polygon object and bring it back to the center. So I could go in here and make some of these adjustments. Maybe I will. I'll take this edge loop and I'll slide it up a little bit. And I'll take this edge loop and scale it up a little bit. It's going to give me a little bit cleaner edge. Okay, this one here I'll pull down. Actually, I'm going to leave this one alone for now. But I think you can see, you know, what I'm doing here. So if I select this object and hit the 3 key, you know, that gives me that real nice cylinder. I'm going to deal with this a little bit later. You know, I think that curve is just a little bit too soft, but I'm going to deal with it later. One of the reasons that I say that I'm going to deal with these later is because when you're dealing with Booleans, a lot of people have problems with Booleans. They say to me, well, the Boolean tool is very unreliable. It doesn't work right all the time, and it's just a little wonky. And I think that the real truth behind that is that it likes to have very, very simple geometry. So I try to use primitives or just initial shapes like, you know, revolves and things like that. I try to break it down into its simplest parts, and then make sure that your construction history is off as well. So what we want to do here is just deal with one of these sections, actually two of these sections. So in the top view here, I've set this to select faces. I have my lasso select tool, and I'm going to go ahead and select just two of these sets of faces. So here they are. I've got, you know, all the faces that I want, and I'm going to hold down the Shift key and select over everything, and that's going to invert my selection, and I'm just going to delete. So now I have my section. The next step here is to create the indentation, and I'm not really being too careful about, you know, the measurements and the different dimensions and the scale here. So you can deal with that on your own. But I'm going to go ahead and create a polygon sphere. Now, when I create a polygon that I want to have rounded, I usually use a factor of 8. So if I create a sphere and I have my axis divisions set to 8, you know, the default here is 20 by 20, right? So that creates a pretty dense sphere here, and that's a little too dense for what I'm trying to accomplish. So I'm going to use 8 axis divisions. Those are the radial axes, and I'm going to use 4 height divisions. The height divisions is something that that you can play around with, but the 8 axis divisions is kind of a hard number, and you'll see why in a minute. The other thing that I want to do is set my axis along the Z here. So my Z axis goes right through here, and I want the north and south pole of this to be lined up along along this Z axis here, and you'll see why in a minute. So I'm going to go ahead and apply that. That gives me a light sphere. So let's just go ahead and scale this. And then I'm going to use my my move tool and my C key that's my curve snap tool. Hold down the C key. You can see the center of the pivot changes to a circle. And then I'm going to come over here to where I want to place this, and I'm going to click on this curve with my middle mouse button and then drag. It constrains this to that little piece of face right there, and it stops as soon as it hits a vertex. So I'm going to drag this all the way down so that my sphere is actually centered right on the vertex of those top 2 pieces. And I'm going to scale it a little bit. Okay, so let me just point out a couple things. First of all, by constraining it vertically, I know that my horizon line lines up perfectly with this vertical right here because I snapped it right to that center line. Because my section here curves backwards a little bit, these are a little bit off, but that's okay. So in order to create the rest of this this little indentation here, I'm going to start by taking this object here. I'm going to put it on a layer, and I'm going to make that layer a template. It's over here. I'll make that layer a template so we can see what's going on. I'm going to go ahead and select the bottom faces of my sphere, and I'm going to delete them. And then I'm going to take this edge here going all the way around, and I'm going to extrude it. And when I extrude it, you know, my extrude tool is it wants to line up with the normals of my extrusion, but by clicking on this little clock icon here, I can extrude it simply along the world axis, and that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to extrude it along the Y axis. And that's going to give me that indented piece. All right. So I'm going to undo this for now, and I want to point out that when I create this extrusion, remember that all of my edges lined up really nicely from this piece to this piece. So I'm going to think ahead just a little bit, and I'm going to extrude this directly to this horizontal curve, this one, and this one. And that way I'll know that I have a much better chance of my edge loops lining up. So I'm going to leave this layer here as a reference layer, and that means that I can snap to it, but I can't select it. So I'll select my curve, my edge here. I'll extrude it one more time. Change my space to world space. Change my extrusion just to the Y axis, and then I'm going to hold the C key and middle mouse click on this horizontal edge, and that snaps my extrusion down to there. I'm going to hit the G key. That re-invokes my extrude tool. I'll click the Y axis and repeat. I'll just hold down the C, middle mouse click, and snap. Hold the C key and snap down to there. I'll hit the G key again, back into world space, click on the Y axis, hold down the C key, and I've extruded to there. Now it looks like this other edge is right at the bottom there, so I'm not going to worry about that now. I'm anticipating that may cause me some problems down the line, but we can deal with them a little bit later. At this point, I just want to be close. So I'll hit the G key again, go back into world space, and this time I'm just going to go a little past, you know, wherever I need to be. So that's the piece that I'm going to do my Boolean. So I'm going to open up the, so at this point then, I just want to clean up a little bit. So I'll go into object mode, I'll select both of these, I'll go to edit, delete by type history, and that gets rid of all my extrusion history and sort of resets everything here. Now, when I use my Boolean tool, the order in which you pick these and the direction of the normals is what really matters. So if I select 1 and 2 and I go to my Boolean tool, this is a Boolean Union, and the classification is normal, and you can see what I get. I get one object here that you know, that's kind of unified. So that's not really what I want. I want to change my classification to edge, and that is going to cut this out very neatly in exactly the way that I'm looking. All right. You may run into a little bit of a problem with this depending on which way the normals are going. Notice that if I let's just undo that Boolean. I'm going to go into my single-sided lighting here, okay, and you can see that you know, the illumination appears only where the normals are facing. So my normals are facing inward on this sectional piece, and that has to do with the way that I drew the NURBS curve initially. And that's what you want. In order to get a successful Boolean the way that we want this, we want the normals to be facing in the same direction, you know, based on where we want that cut to be. If I were to select this piece and reverse it, reverse those normals, so that now the black part, or the non-normal side, is on the outside, I wouldn't be able to get the cut that I was looking for. So I go into a Boolean here, and I turn that to edge, and you can see that it cuts it on the wrong side. So let's go ahead and reverse this so that my black side is facing out, and I want to just make sure that I delete the history one more time, and then I'll go ahead and cut this Boolean, and I'll make my classification edge, and that'll cut that out just nicely. But I can go back into my two-sided lighting so that I can see everything, the way that, so that I can see everything properly. And this looks pretty good. Let's just double check. Down here, it looks like I've got kind of a double, well, I've got a double edge down here. You can see where this is not lining up properly here. This becomes a triangle. This face right here is a triangle. This face right here is a multi-sided polygon, and I have the same problem over here and over here with this triangle. So I'm going to go ahead and clean that up a little bit. It's best to do this now. I know that the shape of this indentation is exactly the way that I want it. I'm not so concerned about the layout of these polygons. So I'm going to use the target weld tool, and I'm going to weld everything to the bottom here. So I'll just take this and weld that there, and I'll take this one and weld it again. This one I'll weld down, and here I'll weld to the corner there, and then this one to the corner there. The way that I set it up was accurate enough so that I really have very little that I need to do in terms of repair. If you're not highly accurate, when you set this up and don't snap the way that I did, you're going to run into a little bit more repair than I did. So let's just take a look at this. Well, there's one other problem. Let's just take a look at this first. Hit the 3 key, and you can see that it's giving me this kind of wonky business right here. So I think the issue with that is that I have well, first of all, this face right here is a 5-sided face, 6-sided face, sorry. So I want to fix that. And I may have a little bit of a problem with some vertices that aren't merged, so I'll deal with that as well. So going back to this idea of using an 8-sided sphere, if I place an 8-sided sphere inside a 4-patch configuration, that means that all I need to do is connect with a multi-cut. I connect from the corner here up to the corner here, and that's going to give me the quads that I need. Now you may decide that those quads are a little bit too elongated, which is not really a problem because you can put in another edge loop here if you want. Actually, it wouldn't be an edge loop. It would be just edges, because you can't put an edge loop in where you don't have quads. So let's just go straight across here. Okay, and now I can select these vertices, and in the same way that I did it with the NURBS piece, I can move this along the y-axis, hold the V key down, and snap it down to the level of that vertex. And this one I'll do the same thing. So now that's nice and straight. I can go into my multi-cut tool and just cut this across here and cut this across here. The other problem that I have is where I created this sphere, I have triangles. That's an easy thing to deal with. I just select this edge here and this edge here, every other edge, and delete them. And that leaves me with quads inside. So let's go ahead and clean this up a little bit. Let's select this whole thing, and I just want to make sure that it's combined. Okay, I get an error message so that I know that it is definitely combined. The Boolean did that for me. and I'm going to go ahead and merge. So I'll merge all my vertices, and this should give me a nice straight, you know, a nice even distribution there. So it was a combination of not having quadrangular geometry and the possibility that some of these vertices weren't merged. But that gives me this nice smooth surface. It's a little bit too smooth. I think that this transition here, I don't have a hard line there. So I'm going to go ahead and fix that. I can do that by inserting edge loops. I'm going to go into the options, and I want to make sure that I'm set on equal distance from edge. And I'll come in here and let's just come in here, and I'll come in pretty tight there. And I'm going to do another one on the inside, you know, pretty tight there. So that's going to give me that nice tight. Let's turn off the wireframe on shaded. That gives me that real nice tight indentation. I got another problem down here, so let's take a look at that. This edge loop here, it's discontinued down here, so I'm going to need to fix that. 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is a 5-sided polygon, so that's not good. So let's deal with that. So when I use the multi-cut tool, I'll start here, and then if I hold the shift key down, that's immediately going to place the next vertex halfway along this face. So that's what I want to do. And then I'll do the same thing here, and then shift, and that's halfway along that face. So that's important because when I duplicate this around this radial axis, I want to make sure that this lines up with its neighbor, which is going to be this one over here. So from here, then I want to you know, multi-cut along here. And you can see, you know, what I get here is I get these two triangles. So I'll just go in and select this center edge here and delete it. So this is probably going to work out okay. I've got my quads there. If I want to get a harder edge here, I can go ahead and insert an edge loop right along the bottom edge right there. So that's going to give me a nice hard edge along there. And while I'm at it, I'm going to just go ahead and select this whole thing, and I'm going to go into my cleanup. So down here I have my cleanup menu. I don't want to clean anything up yet, but I want to use this to select polygons that match what I have selected down here. So I'm just selecting 4-sided faces. So if I click on apply, that's going to select all my quads. But more importantly, it's not going to select the faces that are not quadrangular. So that would make these the non-quads. And yep, that was my mistake there. So what I probably want to do with this is do a little target welding. So I'm going to just go ahead and weld to here and to here. And that makes these quads. Yeah, I should have noticed that to begin with, but you know, I didn't really need that extra little piece there. Let's just pull this a little closer. I didn't need that little piece there. So now let's select this and do our cleanup. Select 4-sided faces, and I've selected everything. So that just means that everything is a quad. So that's good. So where was I here? I wanted to put another edge loop across the top here to define, you know, the corner a little bit better. And I can do the same thing down here. Actually, I think that corner is pretty well defined, right? So let's select this. And yeah, it looks nice. I've got a nice hard edge up here. I can fix that now. So the top and along the inside, and I'll do the same thing at the bottom here and here. So when I have those tight edge loops and I hit the 3 key, that's going to give me that nice tight corner. So let's delete the history, and I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this. I have that set to my 9 copies, so I'll just go ahead and apply that. And notice that as soon as I did my Boolean, what happened was my pivot point got centered along this object. So it's rotating and duplicating along the center of the object, not the center of the world. So just Control Z, hit the Insert key to change the pivot point, hit the W key so I can see it, and the Insert key. And I'm going to go ahead and just snap this to the grid. So let's just go into the right view here, and along the Z-axis I'll hold down the X key and snap it to the grid. Let's just look at the front view, make sure it's there. That should be fine. So I'll duplicate special, and you can see that now creates this this piece that I was looking for. So here I can go ahead and select all the pieces and merge them. Combine them and merge the vertices. And that should work okay. But you can see what's happening here is I've got that wonkiness, right? So I'm not sure what that problem is. Okay, so I've backed up. I took a few minutes to try to figure out what was causing all that problem, and you know, as most things, it turned out to be user error. What I did was I completely miscounted here. I wanted to go 60 degrees, but the number of copies, I had said that I wanted 9 copies, and what I really want is 5. 6 sections times 60 degrees is my 360 degree circle. I don't know what I was thinking when I said that I wanted 10 for 360 degrees, but maybe you noticed that and were sort of mentally calling me on that. So I already have 1. I want a total of 6, so the number of copies is going to be 5. Let's go ahead and apply that. And now if I select all 6 copies and I go to my mesh tools here, my mesh, and combine these, and then I go to my mesh tools and I merge. So I mesh display, edit mesh and merge. Okay, then I should be able to select this in object mode and get that nice clean piece right there. So that's step 1. So for the second part of this process, you know, I essentially want to create a Boolean here to create the hole. I like to work on the grid, and you notice that some of these edges line up perfectly with my x-axis here, but on the z-axis it's the wrong one. So I want to be working in between these indents here, not in the middle of one of the indents. So I like to work in the front view, and in the front view here I've got the middle of the indent. So this is an option that you can take. I just want to take this thing, and on the y-axis I'm going to rotate this 30 degrees, and that's just going to rotate it slightly so that in the front view, you know, the middle of these indents is what's showing, not the edge. All right, so that's something that you can choose to do if you like or not. I want to make sure that I'm working again without history. So I have my last merge vertices there and my combine. So I'll just edit, delete the history. Okay, and then the other thing is that I want to get rid of this little bit of rotation. It probably doesn't matter at all, but I like to work clean and I don't like to take any chances. So I'm going to go ahead and go to my Modify Freeze Transformations. And that just leaves my object where it is and resets all these values to 0. The next step to this is to select the faces that extend to halfway into these indentations on either side. All right, so it looks like I've got all the faces. So I'm going to do the same thing that I did before. I'm going to hold down the Shift key and draw a big selection box around the whole thing and delete all those faces. So now I've got a half an indent on either side, and I've got a nice clean piece of geometry where I can create my Boolean. So I'll just, out of habit, I'm going to delete my history. Looks like everything is nice and clean. So remember, we're looking for 8s here. And if I want to line this up just right, what I can do is notice that I've got a real nice sort of set of 8 polygons right here, and if I 4 polygons right here, and if I center my 8-sided cylinder on this, that'll give me a really nice hole for those bullets. Up here, I don't have that, so I'm going to put another edge loop in here. There's probably a way that I can line these up with this one down here. Let's look at the top view and hit the 4 key. So it does look like I should be able to do that. Let's take this vertex here. This is the one that's on the new top here. And I'm going to go ahead and move this along the z-axis and just snap it to this vertex here. The other ones I'm going to probably have to line up manually anyway, so I'm not going to worry about that. But you know, essentially the cylinder that I create is going to be lined up with its center on this vertex and this vertex. So those are the ones that I wanted to line up. I'm going to go ahead and create a cylinder, polygon cylinder. I'm going to make the axis on the Y here. The cap divisions don't matter. I'm going to delete those anyway. My axis divisions I definitely want to be 8, and I'll go ahead and create that. Okay. I'm going to move this so that I am on. I'm going to move this so that I'm lined up with this vertex. So I'll hold the V key down, snap it to that vertex, and then I'm going to just go ahead and take this these faces here. I'll select all the faces, and then I'll hold the Control key and deselect those faces. So I just have those, and I'll pull this up so that I'm now intersecting, you know, with my edges there. So this looks pretty good. Looks like it's a little bit off down here, but that can be fixed pretty easily. It's perfect. It's a little bit off up here as well, but I think I'm good, you know, for this Boolean. So let's take those faces and delete them. I'll just select them all and then Control and deselect those, and I'll delete those. Okay, and now we want to do our Boolean again, and remember we want our normals to be facing on the inside of this piece. So I'm just going to show my single-sided lighting again. So let's go ahead and select both of these and come in and do our Boolean and turn our classification to edge. And actually that's exactly what we wanted. So that gives us that nice hole right in that piece right there. I'm going to turn my two-sided lighting back on. And so that gives us that perfect little bullet hole there. Now down here, we just have a little bit of adjustment to do. You can see that this edge falls on the middle. I mean, this vertex here falls in the middle of this edge. So that's giving us, you know, this multi-sided polygon. Same thing with this. So you know, the position of these edges is not absolutely critical. So I can use my target weld, and I'll just weld that there. It's giving me a little bit of a problem there. There we go. I'll weld that one there, you know, and just kind of work my way around so that I'm giving myself these nice quads. Notice that I'm moving these vertices towards the circle, not the other way around, and I want to do it that way because I don't want to change the shape of this cylinder. I'll do the same thing up at the top, wherever I have a problem. So I can target weld this one here and this one here. So I have some multi-sided polygons here as n-gons, and I can fix that by just doing a multi-cut from corner to corner there. I want to make sure that my edge flow is turned off because that would change the shape of this. So I'll just click, you know, here and here, enter, and then here and here. So that looks like it's giving me quads all around. One more. It looks like there's okay, one more here. Okay, and if I want to protect this edge. All right, so you can see how that edge loop there stops right here, and that's an indication that I have a non-quadrangular edge right here. So let's just go into my cleanup. I'll select four-sided faces. I just want to select these. Yeah, so this one for some reason is not four-sided, and I'm not really sure why. So it looks like it might just be there's an unmerged vertex there somewhere. So let's select this and go to merge. Let's see if that fixes it. Yeah, so it was an unmerged vertex there, so it looks like we have all four-sided faces. It looks like I inadvertently deleted an edge here, so we'll have to replace that. So go back to my multi-cut tool and cut right down the middle there. So now let me just select this object mode and look for my four-sided faces, and that's going to give me all my quads. So that looks pretty good. So just like before, if I select this and I hit the 3 key, I got much too soft a hole right there, so I definitely want to put in a couple more edge loops. So this may be a little wonky here. No, it looks pretty good. If I just go right along the edge right there, and then I go right in the inside there, and I'll do the same thing down here. Click on the edge right there, and click on the inside right there, and then select this in object mode and hit the 3 key. I'm going to just go ahead and turn off my wireframe on shaded for a minute just so that I can see. Yeah, it looks like I've got a really nice hole right there. I've got the perfect 1/6 of this piece. So let's just select this. I want to make sure that the pivot point again is going to be at the origin. So I'll just hold down the hit the insert key, hold down this blue arrow here, hold down the X key, and I'll snap that right there. Then I'll select my object. And edit, duplicate special, and that should give me my 5 copies, not 9, 5 at 60-degree rotation. Let's just close that window down a little bit. And I'll hit apply, and that's going to give me my 5 copies. Now I'll select them all, combine, merge, delete history, hit the 3 key, and that's my revolver. If you want to build in any of these other details, you can certainly do that. You can make the decision yourself whether you want to build them in you know, at the beginning, at the end. You know, you cut this up again and put in, you know, whatever other details that you want. But that's the way that the Boolean is going to work for your revolver.